Hello, everyone, and congratulations on completing the 2018 tax season. I'm Lynette Lee Villanueva, Vice President and National Director for the AARP Foundation Tax Aid Program, and I'm excited to be with you on the phone today. As you saw from the emails that you received, this session is focused on volunteers from the Eastern region. We've invited all volunteers from your region. This includes from leadership to counselors, client facilitators, invited everybody to participate in today's call. Today we want to answer your questions on all things tax aid. This is your session. We want to hear from you, and we invite you to ask questions live. Given the short time frame, we are going to focus on questions that we think are of interest to the broadest possible audience. And note that this session is being recorded, and we will publish it online later. So to answer your questions, we have with us several volunteer leaders from throughout the program. We have Steve Connery, who is Chair of the National Tax Training Committee, Beth Hitomi, Chair of the National Operations Committee, and your Eastern Regional Coordinator, Les Jones. We also have several of the state coordinators from the Eastern region. And of course, I'll be here to answer your questions as well. So you might be wondering how you ask a question during the call. This is very easy. It's an interactive forum that we're working with today, and you have the opportunity to ask questions live on the call, and we will do our best to answer them. If you would like to ask a question at any time during the call, you have to remember two things, *3. That's *3 on your telephone keypad, the Foundation staff, 3 on your telephone keypad. After you press it, you'll be connected with an AARP Foundation staff who will note your name, your state, and the questions, and then we'll place you in queue for you to be able to ask your question live. So the sooner you press *3, the sooner you will be online with us. While you are thinking of your questions that you want to ask, I want to take this opportunity to thank you for the work that you do. The program couldn't exist without your dedication. And we do have some preliminary numbers that we wanted to share with you from the 2018 tax season. And this includes that nationally, we helped 2.5 million people gain over $1.3 billion in tax refunds. And for the Eastern region, you helped over 258,000 taxable numbers, and I know our taxpayers are always thankful to us for the service that we provide. So also you may have heard that this year we are commemorating TaxAid's 50th anniversary. We hope that you will celebrate with us by letting your volunteer colleagues know how valued they are. And in fact, we have produced a 50th anniversary pin, lapel pin, that you can order using our online fulfillment system in the volunteer portal. So we do hope that you have received these pins. If not, then please speak to your leadership, and we'll make sure that you get the pin. And we are also looking forward to the next 50 years of the program. AARP Foundation and TaxAid have recently completed our 3-year strategic plan. And this includes TaxAid specifically in several ways, and And what we're looking at, we've looked from research to pilot to test new approaches to program enhancements, and we're applying our best thinking around serving the vulnerable 50+. But at the same time, we're wanting to remain true to the core activities and mission of TaxAid. So you will be seeing some of these new initiatives rolling out, especially around a savings initiative in the next year to 2 years. And right now, I see that we do have quite a few calls coming in, and we will be getting to them very shortly. But first, I just want to remind you to ask a question, you press *3. And right now, I would like to invite Les Jones to the call, the Eastern Regional Coordinator. Les, welcome to the call.
Thank you, Lynette. Good morning. I was appointed last June 1, 2017, which means I've got exactly 1 year under my belt. I've been in the tax aid program for approximately 15 years, serving in various roles: counselor, local coordinator, training specialist, state coordinator, and so forth. I've learned a great deal this past year about the wonderful volunteers that we have in the region, your dedication, your knowledge, and your spirit. And we want to thank you for all that you do for the program and for the people we serve. As I traveled this year, your team spirit was evident in your meetings and your sharing of accomplishments and successes. I am an educator by profession and choice, and have always aspired to leadership roles. This makes for an interesting combination, which is reflected in the type of leader that I am. In the type of leader that I am, I see my primary role as one of support. That is, to support you and your work as a volunteer, as a learner, as a member of a team, as a change agent, and as a person who cares about people and their well-being. With this in mind, I have set out a principle of leadership for the Eastern region. This, simply put, this principle is that first and foremost, volunteers are to experience a feeling of achievement and fulfillment in your work. To realize this vision, it is the responsibility that we all share, whether we're leaders or counselors, to ensure that we have a positive working environment, that we are civil in our discussions and relationships. We have several goals to it in our discussions and relationships. I am asking all of the state coordinators in the Eastern region to consider this important principle, to set a living example, and to stress this expectation at every opportunity they have. We have several goals to achieve in the coming years, namely, number one, enhance our recruitment efforts. This is very important, and it's something that we need to pay attention to. Second is that we need to improve our retention of volunteers, particularly in the first, second, and third years. This is very important, and there are a lot of ideas out there, mentorship being one. Third, we need to expand the programs into areas that are not being served, especially our rural areas and minority being underserved. Last but not least, we need to continually improve our training efforts, not only for new recruits, but for all of us in the program. Now, if I may change direction a little bit, I have the pleasure of introducing the state coordinators for Eastern, who are with us on the call today. As a note, for Eastern, last year, we had a changing of the guard in 4 states: North Carolina, Delaware, Maryland, and Virginia. In 3 of these states, the new coordinator is present, along with, in some cases, along with the retiring state coordinator. They are, for South Carolina, Jody Jackson, who is the current state coordinator in South Carolina. For North Carolina, we have online with us today is Amadeus Alfiguez. I never get your name. Maryland, we have the retiring state coordinator, John Lawrence, and the new coordinator for Maryland, Barbara Wimbush. For Delaware, we have Bill O'Connor, who is the new state coordinator for Delaware. The West Virginia state coordinator, John Traxler, and the new Virginia state coordinator, Gail Dunn, were not able to be with us today due to previous commitments. They are traveling. These folks, all of these folks, are available to answer any specific questions you may have for your state. And of course, as Lynette mentioned, we are all available to answer your questions and to listen to your concerns. Thank you for being a volunteer in the Tax Aid program, and I look forward to meeting you sometime in the future. And at this point, it is my privilege. Thank you for being a volunteer in the Tax Aid program, and I look forward to meeting you sometime in the future. And at this point, it is my privilege to turn it over to Steve Connery, the chair of the National Tax Training Committee. Steve?
Thank you, Les, and I will echo Les and Lynette in my thanks for all that you have done for the Tax Aid program. We've accomplished a lot this year in spite of some obstacles that we had to overcome. Let me give you some updates on where we are on various topics. The first is Tax Slayer. I think overall, most will agree that the performance and the uptime of Tax Slayer was much improved this year compared to the previous filing season. Navigation was easier and simpler. The language was clearer in a lot of areas, easier to read pages. We didn't have any, as the season progressed, very many federal calculation issues. They were all working, everything was working fairly well. There were some changes, however, to the software as the season progressed that broke previously functioning features. TaxSlayer fixed them quickly, but it was frustrating that they happened. And they're aware that this is a frustrating issue for all of our volunteers. Individual state returns, for the most part, were adequate if the returns were simple. However, too many required difficult workarounds or re-entering already entered data. Sites had to prepare paper returns or use the Department of Revenue websites in some case because they just couldn't get done what they needed to in TaxSlayer. TaxSlayer is well aware of this. They've launched a suggestion box to capture ideas. There's over 1,600 federal, state suggestions. They've committed to do many of them, and they continue to evaluate the others. They've got a lot of them that have gone to development for evaluation, and we're encouraged that things will improve, continue to improve in the next filing season. We've been working with your state points of contact for all things TaxSlayer, and again, I think we'll see a lot of good changes before the next filing season. It will not look like TaxWise. It's a different software, but again, improvements are coming. The 2018, we will see tax law changes when we do the returns next year. Most of them, such as the increase in the standard deduction or the changed tax brackets or the changed tax rates, the exemption amount being reduced to zero, those kinds of things are computational, and they won't require a lot of volunteer action. The software about those changes in our training materials. The majority of the taxpayers we serve, not all, but the majority, will probably see a tax cut, which is good. They'll appreciate that. But do note that the individual shared responsibility payment under the Affordable Care Act is reduced to zero in 2019, so there will be no change from past practice when we do the 2018 returns next year. And we'll also have to continue to deal with any reconciliation between premium tax credit or advanced premium tax credit if someone had insurance from the marketplace. But again, so that's basically a 2019 change. We do not know how states will incorporate, or if they will incorporate, or when they will incorporate these federal changes in their tax law. States are looking at it in different ways. We'll just have to wait and see what happens with the states. They will incorporate, or when they will incorporate these federal changes in their tax law. States are looking at it in different ways. We'll just have to wait and see what happens with the states. The IRS also needs to provide instructions and form changes to TaxSlayer around the federal changes, and we don't have a date on when that will happen. So we're in a hold mode for many of these things right at this point. Another item is around scope. As you know, the IRS spec group determines the scope of tax law that all the BITA TCE partners can address and publishes that standard scope in their publications 4491 and 4012. The IRS also permits us, Tax Aid, to address some additional aspects of tax law, such as non-cash donations that are more than $500 reported on Form 8283, and there are additional Form 8283, and there are additional codes on 1099-R, for example. Our scope manual, it's available electronically, It lists virtually every form or schedule that a volunteer might see, and notes if it's in or out of scope. And this takes precedence over the IRS pub since our scope is broader. Similarly, we've got our tax aid policy and procedure manual that has some policies that are different than the IRS ones, and that they take priority as well. Your state may also have some additional policies or may curtail scope for some topics that are rarely seen. That's up to your state coordinator to make that decision. There are 2 scope changes that will apply next year at this point. The first is we are permitted to have for self-employed taxpayers to deduct the health insurance premiums as an adjustment to income on line 29. That's the itemized deduction on Schedule A. Also, the preparation of the kiddie tax is now in scope. And again, we will provide training materials as needed. Last item I wanted to mention briefly was around carry forward and consent. The IRS and TaxSlayer implemented an optional process last year for the global carry forward of taxpayer information across all VITA TCE sites. And they did that just before the season started. We had discussions with our legal counsel. There was uncertainty about what documents, if any, we needed to keep as part of that process because there was a consent required, and we elected not to participate. Now, we did have same firm carryover this last tax season, so anyone who came to a tax aid site who had been in a tax aid site the previous year, carry forward was there. And however, unfortunately, TaxSlayer has decided it cannot be offered again without taxpayer consent. There's a lot of legal questions around this whole process. We will have same site carry forward, and we are having conversations with Foundation Legal Counsel about the global carry forward, and we'll make a decision about whether we will participate in that once we have those discussions. Okay, I will turn this back over to Lynette now.
Okay, thank you, Steve. So for those that just joined, you might be wondering how you can ask a question. You can ask a question by pressing *3 on your numeric keypad on your phone, and you'll be connected to a Foundation staff person who will screen your call and take down your name, state, and question, and then put you in the queue to be asked live. We do have quite a number of questions in, so I know it's going to be difficult getting through all the questions, but we'll try to do our best. If we can't get through to all of them, we do have a little bit of flexibility of staying on longer than the 45 minutes we scheduled it for. So we will possibly do that depending on how many questions we get through. So first, I'd like to go to Jim in Virginia and has a question for us about Maryland and Virginia state tax returns. So Steve, I think this one's coming your way. Jim, you're live on the call.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. We had problems with part year returns for both Maryland and Virginia. They weren't, Maryland, sometimes you couldn't even do it, and Virginia, they weren't done correctly. Now, is anything being done with, working with TaxSlayer to resolve those problems?
Jim, this is Steve. You're not alone with that. With Virginia and Maryland, there were several states that had similar issues, and we have had conversations with TaxSlayer and pointed out the details to them of these issues, and they are addressing many of them. I don't know whether they're going to be able to get everything fixed or not. There's a lot of change that's been requested, but they're well aware that we had a lot of frustrations with our state returns this year, and they have committed to make improvements. And based on what happened with the federal's return this last tax season, I'm optimistic that we'll see a lot of changes, a lot of improvements for the next June. Thank you, Jim. I'm optimistic that we'll see a lot of changes, a lot of improvements for the next June. Thank you, Jim.
Okay, thank you, Steve. And now we'll go to Judith in North Carolina. Judith, welcome to the call.
Thank you.
Can you ask your question, Judith?
Yes. Is there or when do you expect there to be a 2018 federal tax table?
I think that the the formal tax table, I don't know. That's a short answer. The IRS is working on getting their publications changed to reflect all the tax law changes. This takes a while. They have to go through a lot of processes to get them all approved and get them issued. Somebody could calculate what the tax rate would be. Jeff Bogart, who has done a lot of calculators for us on his website, has an estimated tax worksheet for 2018, which includes the latest tax rates. So those are available as well. But when the actual federal returns will be out, I don't know. I know they're working on them, but they've got a lot to do.
Okay. Now, we have several questions that have come in around preparing returns for higher income level taxpayers. So we will go to one question live on that one, and then we will try to answer them all together. So Teresa, South Carolina, you were the first one in with that question.
Yeah, good morning. My question is why we're supposed to be doing low to moderate income, and I'm just wondering why it's not enforced. We said one of them, we're being forced to take those people and we're turning away the working poor because we've got to be out of the building by a certain time. So I'd like to see something be done about that.
Right, yeah. We get this question quite a bit, so thank you for asking it. I also see Lindy in Virginia also asking about the over $250,000 return that they prepared this year. So I will start off by saying overall the program is reaching the people that we should be reaching. Our average AGI across the program is right at 25,000. So we know that we're reaching those that we should be reaching. But it's these others that are really over the limit that we would consider appropriate for us to be for utilizing a free tax preparation program. Where our hands are tied a little bit is with the TCE grant does not allow us to put in an income limit because it's there for those over the age of 60. We will be having conversations with IRS about this a little bit, but what I will say is that while we can't actually say that there's an income limit or post an income limit, we can have conversations with taxpayers about who the service is for, and I've seen this done in many ways at different sites that, will tell people that their service really is for those of lower income who cannot afford to pay a tax preparation service. And that usually has come across pretty well with lower income who cannot afford to pay a tax preparation service, and that usually has come across pretty well with our volunteers. We also have, and I have no problem with you. Somebody asked me, well, are you okay with us shaming people? Well, I don't know if I would say shaming people, but I am definitely okay with those conversations taking place. And the other issue with an actual income limit is that it would almost have to be done regionally or state by state, and that would just be very difficult as a national program to be able to manage that in our communications or just indicating who we serve. So that is one issue. I would like to turn it over to Les. Les, I believe you have a comment about this as well.
Yes, I agree with what you said, Lynette. It is a difficult situation for us. Patients have come up, and sitting down and talking with the taxpayer whose income is quite above what we feel we should be serving. My experience is that they have been understanding. We do the return, but ask them to consider going to a paid preparer the following year. And we've always found that very successful.
Thank you, Les. Okay, we'll continue on here with Peter in Virginia. Peter, you are live on the call.
Yeah, good morning. My comments about the tax layer is to make it a little more convenient in using it. And some of these things might be a little minor, but it just illustrates, I think, how it could be improved, though. For example, when you're entering the interest income, and you also have some exempt interest for that taxpayer, it would be a lot easier if you just had all that on one page. Tax-wise, always did. And the way it is now, you have to fill in the information about the interest, hit continue, and then reopen another page to put in the exempt interest. And that's pretty much true also when you're doing the itemized deductions for the medical, for example, where you may have several different medical doctors and other kinds of medical deductions. Now, I know you can list them, but once again, you have to list only one on one page and then, close that out and then open another one. It would be a lot easier if everything is just on one page. You can put all that information in. And I guess my last comment is comparing to tax-wise, but the nice thing about tax-wise is on the left side of the page, you can easily click to any schedule you want to look at that was already filled in, just to check how it looked and to maybe make some adjustments because of that. For Tax Slayer, you really have to close out, click a few times before you can actually get to see the forms that you want to look at. So those are my comments.
Steve, do you have any response?
Yeah, I will just. I was just looking at the latest suggestion box list from the Tax Slayer blog site. There are up to 1,851 or 50 rather federal return suggestions included on that. Federal return suggestions included on that. In that list, probably multiple times, is the comment about the interest. There are several people who have expressed that. I don't know whether they're going to make a change in that or not. This is there is no form strain tax layer, and I would be willing to bet there never will be. However, there is the 1040 view, and when you look at that, any schedule that applies that feeds to the 1040, you click on the amount and it will open up. It'll take you to the right spot. Is it the same? No, but it does work. But, that's the way we are at this point.
Thanks, Steve. We're going to transition over to a couple of questions about the volunteer portal, so that's for coming your way. And from Patricia in Virginia. Patricia, welcome to the call.
Hi. Online.
The volunteer portal has not been down with the exception of 3 weekends since the beginning of January. There were 3 weekends, one in January, one in March, one in May, and then this coming weekend, or in June, there will be a weekend down. That's the only time the volunteer portal has been down. If you are encountering issues where you cannot access the portal, that sounds like a local computer issue to you, and we would encourage you to send an email to taxaide@aarp.org and explain the problem you're having and have somebody assist you because the portal has not been down.
Okay, thank you, Beth. And that does open up the issue. If you do have issues, logging in or things like that, we do have people. It does open up the issue. If you do have issues, logging in or things like that, we do have people here who can assist you. So make sure you do get the help that you need. And then also we'll go to David. David, you have a question about expenses?
Yes, this is a question related to approval process for expense reports. Currently, once anyone, even a local coordinator, approves an expense report, it automatically gets paid, even though the expense report might be above their level or even above the district coordinator's level. In most companies, they would set up the expense report approval system so that if an individual level is only authorized to approve $200, then their approval of that would not result in a $500 expense report being paid. But the current system is set up that once an approval is entered, even if it's entered by mistake, that expense report gets paid. And I was wondering, has AARP considered changing the system so that individual levels can only approve expense reports consistent with their written approval authority?
Our current reimbursement approval process allows local coordinators to approve expense requests or reimbursement requests from those people who report directly to them. So we have a direct supervisor approving expenses for their volunteers only. The local coordinator is the person who is best able to determine whether or not those expenses are accurate for the site that they are at. If a volunteer is, the state coordinator has to give their approval before that can be approved by the local coordinator by the process of the pre-approval use. We want the supervisor closest to the reimbursement request being generated to be the one responsible. So local coordinators can approve their site and only their site. District coordinators who have the ability or have the responsibility of supervision for volunteers within their district can approve expenses only for those people who report directly to them or those that get escalated from a local coordinator to them. We do have checks and balances in place. If you are encountering situations where local coordinators are approving expenses that were not incurred at their site, it may be that your volunteers are not following the most recently recommended process of submitting a reimbursement for every assignment that they have. If I work at 3 separate sites, I fill out 3 separate reimbursement requests, each approved by my local coordinator, not one that is approved by one of them. So we want to make sure that the person closest to the approval is the person who has that ability. If there are questions about who can approve what type of expense or reimbursement request, those can be submitted to your ADS and to your state coordinator for assistance in getting those resolved. And if there are specific issues that you have where you can see that somebody was able to approve something that you do not believe they should have been able to, if you could point that out to them and have them direct that to us through the One Support Submit a Request, we can look in to see if there is a failure somewhere. But at this point in time, we have not been able to document anything where somebody was able to approve something that they should not have been able to.
Thank you, Beth. We're going to continue on now with Steve in Virginia. Steve, you're live on the call.
Yes, I have 2 quick questions. One of them, within the Tax Aid Training Committee workbook, even for 2017, there are multiple tax return case examples, and I need to be put in touch with someone that could minimally help me work out the Young case since it encompasses most of the tax scenarios, and if I could take some screenshots, I could probably help other people, but just having some of the numbers at the end, it doesn't always work out for me. The other question I had is I still work full-time like a lot of other folks. In fact, I have 1.5 jobs. But are you all considering any computer-based training or remote WebEx GoToMeeting training this fall, or do you have to go face-to-face? Because last year I had to take off a week of vacation for the training. Thank you.
Thank you. Steve, do you have feedback, and then I can chime in?
Yes, two answers, or two questions, two answers. As far as the young return, submit a ticket through One Support and describe what you need. That way we can get it directly to you easily, mostly easily, and make sure we understand the question that you're asking. But that's the best way, and that's the best way in general for anybody. That if you've got questions that your TRS can't answer, your training specialist can't answer, is to submit a ticket through One Support. The second point, we do have a self-study program that's designed for folks who are tax law and the tax software on your own. It's not web-based at this point. TaxAide will be launching the learning management system, but that's going to take a while, and it's years down the road before we get completely to that point. But we do have a self-study program. It is on One Support, and what is available. Talk to your district coordinator, your training coordinator, and they can help you get that set up.
Okay, thanks, Steve. And that's, as Steve was saying, we're beginning to look into what type of online training. The volunteer portal has an LMS, Learning Management System platform, as part of it. So we are going to take some small steps to see how that goes with some smaller trainings, but before it's real part of it. So we are going to take some small steps to see how that goes with some smaller trainings, but before it's rolled out, for the future use. So we are beginning to look into some of that, and hopefully in the future years we will have more trainings available, web-based. Right now, we'd like to take a pause and get you to participate in a poll. We have one question, and you can use your numeric keypad on the scale of 0 to 9. So I will read the question to you, and if you'll just take a minute to answer, we would appreciate it. So on a scale of 0 to 9, how likely are you to recommend volunteering for AARP Foundation tax aid to family, colleagues, or family members or friends? So that's a 0 is not at all likely, and 9 is extremely likely. So again, the question is, on a scale of 0 to 9, how likely are you to recommend volunteering for AARP Foundation tax aid to a colleague, friend, or family member? So 0 is not at all likely, and 9 is extremely likely. So we'd appreciate it if you pick a number between 0 and 9 and punch that into your keypad on your phone, and I'll give you a moment to do so. Okay, thank you for participating in North Carolina. Judith, you're back with us?
Yes. Are the charitable contributions going to be accepted on the Schedule A for the 2018 tax year?
Judith, this is Steve, and the answer is yes. You can still itemize charitable contributions, and in fact, as I recollect, the limit has gone up, where it used to be 50% of AGI, it's now up to 60% of AGI. However, with the higher standard deduction, it's less likely as many people will be itemizing as they did in the past. And there are some things on Schedule A which have been eliminated, such as if you've had investor-related expenses that were subject to the 2% threshold, that whole section has been eliminated as an itemizable deduction. But charitable deductions will still be there.
Okay, we're going to continue on with Barbara in West Virginia. Barbara?
My question is, when will you have all of the IRS forms available to us through TaxSlayer? Not all forms are currently available.
Well, the typical forms that we use are and that are in scope are in TaxSlayer. They have added additional forms over the last year. If there's something specific that's missing, then we will need to talk to TaxSlayer to see if they can add it. But again, most of the ones we typically use are there. If you know of one that's missing, let us know and we'll follow up.
Okay, I'm going to try to get to as many questions as we can right now. We have about 3 minutes left of the 45 minutes, but we have still about 6 or 7 questions in queue. So right now we'll go to George in South Carolina.
Hello, are you there?
Yes, we're there. Can you ask your questions,
Okay.
George? Thank you.
Question I have is technical stuff, not tax related, and it deals with platforms, infrastructure, and security. And I'm the technical coordinator for South Carolina 1, District 18. I don't know if you have anything new for me that I should be aware of, such as, hey, Windows 10 images that will be released in 2018 and stuff like that, and particularly the policies that would be applied to them on router issues. I'm not sure if this is the right forum, but I'll sign off with that. Okay, have you got anything I should be thinking about now? Over to you.
Okay, thank you, George. So the instructions are out there on how to obtain the Windows 10 licenses. So your TCSs and TC should have that information. If you need additional, we didn't have somebody on the call today from technology, but if you do have questions related specific to, two routers, to upgrading the Windows 10, which is available, licenses are available for that, then please, submit a ticket for that, and we'll be able to get that. I don't know if Les or do you have any comments that you would want to make on that either?
The only comment I would make is that I guess it's a question that can be answered, but is whether or not they've contacted the state coordinator for South Carolina, who is currently acting as the technology specialist for South Carolina. She's got the answers to your question. I know she does. So yeah. I would contact her.
So, and I know Jody's on the call. Jody, do you have anything you'd like to respond to there? Jody, do you have a comment? If not, we'll move on. Okay, so we will continue on with Bill in Virginia. Bill, welcome to the call.
Yes, hi. So I'm in the D.C. Army National Guard. My question, I have 2 questions. First one is, would you be interested to support the State Army National Guard in filing the soldiers' income taxes? That's number 1. And if you are interested, question number 2 is, would you consider training your volunteers on military income taxes?
So, Bill, I'll take this one. So, Bill, as a program, we certify to the advanced level for the program. We do have some sites that are near military bases that have determined that in order to serve the people in that community, they need to certify at military, and will do so. But it isn't a large part of the program. So we would have to take that one locally, and I would say to talk with your state coordinator about that, your leadership. If you need to know how to get to them, then please, you can submit a ticket, an email to us, and we will be able to respond to that. So does anybody else want to chime in on that one?
No, I would reinforce what you said, Lynette. In Virginia, military returns are out of scope, but there can be an exception made. And as you said, it has to go through the state coordinator for approval, and the training of volunteers would have to be in place. So that would be the process to follow.
Thank you, Les. So now we'll move on in North Carolina. Don, you have a question?
Yes, this is Don in North Carolina. When I signed up for the AARP Tax Aid program, it was with the understanding that I would be doing returns for seniors and low-income people. But in the last year or two, I seemed to see an increase in people who are not seniors and are not high income but are moderate income. And I feel like, I'm volunteering my time to compete with H&R Block and these other people that are doing this for a living. And I wondered do we have any sort of age requirements on this program?
Thank you for asking that, Don. We so our primary focus is the over 50 age group, low to moderate income. That is who the AARP Foundation is who the business that we're in to be able to serve those individuals. Where we kind of come in is that we receive funding from IRS as well as AARP Foundation, and we receive 2 IRS grants. One is the tax counseling for the elderly, which is in place to serve those who are 60 plus, which is where the majority of the funding for the program does come. And as part of that grant, a requirement is that we must serve a certain population number-wise or percentage-wise of our business must be over 60 plus, and we do meet that every year. So we're still serving the majority of who we serve is 60 plus, not the 50 plus that even the foundation goes down to. But then we also receive another grant. The VITA grant, which is a volunteer income tax assistance, and that grant does allow us to serve all populations, all income, not all income levels, but all age groups. And through the sites that serve a younger population, we usually assign those to the VITA grant so that we can serve them under the VITA grant. So we do receive funding to do that, but we our general population by far in the program is those over the age of 50 and primarily also over the age of 60. Where we do see the younger families coming in, we do hope that is those that really need the service, that might be more focused on the EITC number returns, and that really do need a free service in order to prepare their return. So I hope that answers. We're not refusing service based on any age population, but we definitely serve those that are the 50 plus population by far larger than any other age group. So we'll take one more call, and then I do want to respect our time. So the last call that we will take is from Fred in South Carolina. Fred, welcome to the call.
I think I've already had my comment early on.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry about that. Then we'll go to Anna in South Carolina. Anna?
Yes, itemized. And it just seems like itemizing has been reduced. Is it going to be even more reduced next year?
Anna, this is Steve. The tax law changes for 2018 eliminated the itemization of expenses that were subject to the 2% AGI threshold, the section of the form I can't remember. So that's a reduction. There is a limitation on the sales and state and local income tax and sales tax deduction to $10,000. So there will be some people that will no longer be able to use that deduction as much as they could. I don't know that we have many with that, but that is applicable. But probably the most impact will be the fact that the standard deduction has gone from up to $12,000 per person on a return. Impact will be the fact that the standard deduction has gone from up to $12,000 per person on a returns, and that means that there'll be less likely there'll be enough itemization items to get over that threshold. Don't know exactly how it's going to unfold yet, but that's the guess. But everything else will still be there on the Schedule A. You can enter it, and TaxSlayer will pick the better of the two, the standard or the itemized deduction, unless, of course, you need to force the itemized deduction because you're doing a married filing separate return and spouse itemized. But again, I think we're going to see fewer people itemizing because of the higher standard deduction, but we'll see.
Okay, thank you, Steve. Well, I do want to thank all of you for participating and joining us today. It has been a great conversation, and I have actually enjoyed and appreciate the questions that you have. I do want to let you know that if you would like to ask your questions still, to please send it in an email to taxaide@aarp.org. That's all one word with no hyphen, taxaide@aarp.org, and we will make sure that we route it to the proper person to be able to respond to you. But we do want to again let you know that we will. This has been recorded, and it will be posted on the One Support in the next couple weeks. So we will make sure that you have the information of how to access that if there are others in your community and at your site that could not participate today. But the TaxAide team, our leadership, and I truly thank you for the hard work that you have put into this important program and the help that you assist taxpayers with every year, which leads to serving millions of people who I know all appreciate the service that you bring, that we all bring to it. So thank you again. I look forward to hopefully getting out and meeting some of you during the next tax season and at our meetings as we start up again this fall and into next year. So thank you.